like to welcome you here, Theosophical Society, on a very lovely rainy day. I do believe that probably many people, for whatever reasons, fear the rain, because normally we would have many more people. But the ones that are here are the ones that will be fortunate today. So very happy to have you all here. For those of you who are less familiar with the Theosophical Society, I always like to mention what its stated mission is. You are aware of the campus and things like that, but why are we here? So the Theosophical Society has a stated mission, which is essentially to serve humanity, but in a very specific way. To serve humanity by cultivating an ever-deepening understanding and realization of three things: the ageless wisdom, the wisdom tradition that has existed before we did. So the ageless wisdom, spiritual self-transformation, which is really kind of the point of why we're here, and then also the unity of all life. Those three things have been and will continue to be our focus. Toward that end, we have programs such as this one being Wisdom for Living. So the idea is that there is such a thing as wisdom, something that supersedes knowledge, but wisdom is a possibility for all of us. And it's something that, because it is universal, it expresses everywhere. So what we have tried to do in these programs, and have done it quite well, quite honestly, Ram Kumar has taken this program and really developed it into something, has been to invite people to address people like us from all fields of human activity. People who have found ways to apply spiritual principles in the variety of fields of human endeavor. So today is no exception to that. For some, it might seem the idea of investment and finance might seem to be an odd combination for a spiritual organization. I think that's because we tend to think rather limited ways sometimes. In the basic four goals of life, which are expressed in Hindu tradition especially, there are four goals, of which one is dharma, one is kama, moksha, but then there's also artha, which relates to means of life. It relates to how it is we live. It relates to how we support ourselves. It relates to financial stability. It relates to wealth. It relates to being self-sufficient, sufficiently so, that we can contribute to our broader community. Without it, we all become a burden. So to those of us who think that this is somehow separate from a spiritual life, we need to think again. So we're very, very fortunate to have Mr. Shyam Sekhar with us here today. I have his biography, which I'll have to shorten because it's quite impressive. But I'll just share that with you. Mr. Shyam Sekhar began as a chemical engineer by education, and he started investing in his last year in college. So he's been at it for 2-3 years? I'm kidding. Since he was young. His last year of college, and he joined his family business while he was simultaneously pursuing his interest in equity investing. So he started his own first research desk in 1993, developed a proprietary growth investing framework, and then he emerged as an aggressive investor and a significant shareholder in several companies. He was the president of Tamil Nadu Investors Association between 2012 to 2015. During his leadership, the Investment Association emerged as a nationally recognized investor body and was holding on the national level investor conferences. So he has been very active in that sphere. iThought, which is a financial services firm, was bootstrapped by him in 2009 and has emerged as the fastest growing investment management firm from the south of India. Firm manages 4 investment products that are consistently beating their benchmarks since inception, an active handle on Twitter, regular comments, columns for money control, multiple YouTube channels, and Tamil and English distinguish him as a well-recognized investment thinker. Today he's going to present a perspective on how India is changing and where it is that opportunity may be accelerating. So with that, please welcome Mr. Shyam Sekhar.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for having me over here to speak on this topic. When we talk of the investment world and the capital market, in a broad sense, we associate these fields with the affluent, especially in India. But when you look at the West, almost everybody has a correction, indirectly or directly. If you look at a developing country, the problem of a developing country is that you have population, but you don't have empowerment. So, if you are able to bridge this gap over, let's say, 2-3 decades, then a much larger section of people become empowered, as a result of which they have a clear need to invest, be a part of the economic activity in a more direct way, and also to prosper and profit from it. Indirect economic mobility, which is what people get when they participate in the capital market, because they are not running a business themselves, but participating in the overall growth of a country, is definitely an effective way of making people, even at the bottom of the pyramid, to participate in progress. In today's presentation, you will get a fair idea of how this is likely to happen. Let's see a few facts first. These are relating to India as a country, and I'm taking 1990 as the starting year, which is when we had a crisis and then we had liberalization. And this is a chart that tells you how India has been growing. Except for the COVID year, India has never had negative economic growth. And broadly, the economic growth has been, you can see those vertical dotted black lines, somewhere around 6% for a long time, and then a little more than that, and then higher. And now is a erratic phase post-COVID, but I presume we should be back to that 6% of GDP growth. What does this mean? It means that unlike the West, where the base level is much higher and growing faster on that base is becoming a challenge, India has a lot of headroom to grow. This growth is significant because if you look at the growth prior to 90, it was significantly lower. And when your growth is lower, your ability to do many things is restricted. For example, you're not able to invest at a rate which solves the needs of society. Your investment is always behind. Historically, our investments would have been 2-3 decades behind. Today, it's probably 1 decade behind what we need. And this is with relative, in connection to the physical infrastructure of the country. But over these 30 years, we have done one significant catch-up, which I think is the game changer for India. And that is in the digital public infrastructure. We have created a lot of digital public infrastructure in our country, which is not in private hands, where private hands can collaborate, use the infrastructure and deliver services to society. This digital infrastructure has ensured that our ability to leverage even a 6% growth is much higher than it would have otherwise been. You know, you've all heard these phrases like jobless growth in the last decade. It's a very commonly used phrase. What does it mean? It means the economy is growing, but people are not finding opportunity. The digital public infrastructure will unleash opportunity like never before, because it creates speed in transmission of data, information, capital, services, and the reach of all these things is so deep. You can probably have capital moving faster to a place than you can move a bag of rice even today. I'm giving you a clear contrast on that. Because of the digital infrastructure that we have put in place. What would this mean? It would mean that when you move capital, when you move services, when you move data, when you move so many things, the only thing that needs to move faster in our country today is goods. That's the irony of India. We are inverting everything. We're going to move goods faster at a later stage than you move all the other things faster. The West actually did it the other way around. If you see all the infrastructure, if you look at China, they had such infrastructure. We are still probably 20 years behind in that area. What this would mean is that the size of our economy will grow. We will be able to move ahead of multiple countries. And look at this, we have moved ahead from 2010, from the 9th position to the 5th position. And over the next few years, 5 years, we would move to the 3rd position. The gap between the 3rd and the 2nd is something that will take a very, very long time to bridge, and probably it's going to be a very steep climb for us. But even this is significant because this positioning is not something which is aspirational, it is going to happen. The question is, how does this kind of economic growth translate on the ground? How does it help society to evolve? And how does it change the financial aspirations of people? No, the previous one. Go ahead. If you look at India, we haven't created a working population as fast as we should have. You have a large population, but your working population is still not growing at a pace which will enable our growth to become accelerated. The reasons are multiple. But today, if you see, we are demographically in a good place to grow our position so that we would be one of the largest contributors to the world's working population in the next 7-8 years. It means that our productivity has got huge headroom for growth because we would be able to put people to work on industries, on services, both serving our country as well as serving the world. And that opportunity is something which is right before us. It is staring us in the eye. So we have the population, we have the opportunity, and we have the infrastructure in place on the digital side. The physical side is still catching up, but I presume that even that would come in over that phase. This would give you an idea of how the workforce will grow. Your population will go from roughly 140 crore to 160, but your workforce will grow from 53 crores to 72 crores, and your workforce who pay taxes will go up from 31 crores to 56 crores. This would mean that our economy will become formalized significantly in the coming decade. It will be 2 more decades before we reach this, but incrementally we would be going there. And India has set 2047 as a target. You're seeing all the economic projections coming for a 25-year period from 2022. This would mean you will have a healthy middle class, which is necessary to have a healthy political democracy. A society made of rich and poor has no mediating group, either politically or economically. So you need a very, very large middle class, and I think that is something that is definitely going to be built over the next 2 decades. If you need a middle class, you need a financial sector which is healthy. If you look at where the financial sector was 10 years ago and where it is today, there's a significant improvement in the financial sector. Why is the financial sector so important? Because you need to lend to people who really need the credit, and you need to lend to them at a rate which is reasonable. If you look at India, we have always lent at almost unserviceable rates to people at the bottom of the pyramid. And those rates have nothing to do with the integrity of a person. I'll give you an example that I have myself experienced. In a village, if you give money to somebody who needs for maybe some reason, and they are working with you, they never leave your job till they have paid you the last rupee. Even if they want to leave that job, they work till the liability is extinguished. That's the kind of integrity you can see in an Indian village today, even today. But the same person, when they go to a money lender, has to pay 2 to 3% interest per month. There is a bank in the village. That's the irony. Now there are multiple banks within 5 kilometers. But credit doesn't travel on the basis of the credit worthiness and the integrity of the borrower. This is why we have the banks lending a lot of money to people who don't have integrity. And then you have a crisis. What has happened in the last decade, and that, in my opinion, has a lot to do with the public digital infrastructure, is you have financialized 80 crore people with a bank account. You have given them an identity, you have given them a debit card, and you have given them a UPI. Now, most of their transactions can get digitally captured. Money travels to the bank account. Their income starts getting visible. So even somebody who is selling tender coconuts on the beach here can show how much money he is receiving in his account and how much he is paying. Effectively, income gets discovered digitally. Income was always there, but the discovery of income makes these people eligible to take a loan from a bank, and the bank has visibility where it can confidently lend to them. This is where the digital infrastructure and the financial sector are going to change the way capital travels down. What happens when capital travels down is, you start seeing people enjoy a quality of living at an earlier stage than it otherwise would, because if you are paying higher interest, you're going to spend a significant part of your income on interest. If that income is available to them otherwise, they start spending it on multiple other things, which would directly translate into a better quality of life. The financial sector is ready to actually service society in that way, because the banks have been cleaned up, the system is clean, data is available. Now to the thrust on infrastructure. This is where the COVID crisis actually has been used by India in a way which no other country has done. Here is what I am trying to say. In the entire 5-year tenure of 2004 to 2009 of the government, the amount of money spent in infrastructure is lower than the money spent in infrastructure investment in the last financial year in India. Just 1 year's investment. The money that is going to be spent next year and this year together will equal, it will be significantly higher than the money that has been spent over the entire decade between 2004 and 14 on infrastructure. So essentially, we have used the COVID crisis to create higher focus in infrastructure, and we are spending roughly 10 lakh crore, which is 10 trillion rupees in infrastructure every single year. So the government's thrust in public infrastructure, this is what the government is doing, effectively will have a ripple effect on the private sector also, which did not until recently have the confidence to do capital expenditure, which means that the ability to spend was available, but capital was not finding the courage. Rather, capitalists were not finding the courage to spend. The government, by leading the way, is now saying that we will continue to spend. Now you go and spend. And the opportunity gets priced open to accelerate our infrastructural investments. This has never happened. Ideally, this should have happened in 1984 or 5 when Rajiv Gandhi met Deng Xiaoping, because that was the time we should have done this. We clearly missed 3 decades in doing this. It's not a short period of time that we missed, because I have read that this is what was advised by Deng Xiaoping to Rajiv Gandhi at that time, but for various reasons we couldn't do it. Anyway, but this is something that will definitely change the trajectory of investments in our country. It will change opportunities. I'll explain to you how physical infrastructure is also important. It's not digital alone cannot do it, because you need both rising in tandem. If you see the time taken for goods to travel, the time taken for movement of goods in our country, the losses arising due to the time taken itself is significant. The amount of money, capital that will be saved by people because their goods can reach markets faster itself can be a game changer in our country, because so much of wealth is lost by people at the bottom, especially farmers. Suppose you're sending perishable stuff, right? And it takes longer. Then by the time it reaches, that guy is only going to pay you for what is saleable. Whatever is not saleable is going to deduct it from the consideration. So all these things will get accelerated like never before, and that again will create more wealth for people who at the moment are bearing the cost. So infrastructure investments for the next 5 years, if it continues at this rate, we will see growth accelerating with a lag. At the moment, people are still saying we'll grow at 6%. It's hard to expect more than that. But if you look at what happened between 1999 and 2004, those investments gave us a fillip. That was a very, very nominal investment rate actually. This is a much higher rate, which means that the absolute growth that we can get through these investments will be much higher than what we got between 2004 and 2008. Next one. This is just a slide that gives you an idea of how urban infrastructure is changing. We had 25 kilometers of metro in 2002. It became 248 in 2014, and today it's 859. I won't be surprised if this adds one more digit very shortly, or maybe 2 digits. And the number of cities has increased from 1 to 5 to 18. This is the point that I was making. When everybody was given a bank account, initially we had this reaction that there are bank accounts, but where's the money? What's the point in opening bank accounts which have no money? But today, a very small fraction of these bank accounts are unfunded. Most of the bank accounts have money. Money is traveling through these accounts. And along with this, the percentage of population having smartphones has increased to 66%, and the cost of 1 GB data has literally crashed. You can see it from 260, it has come to 7 rupees. So the accessibility of data has changed, and everybody has a bank account, which effectively has financialized a huge section of our population. Now, when you look at India GDP, what we fail to see is that this GDP is not evenly generated. It has never been evenly generated. The developed states, which is Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, these 4 states have probably contributed significantly more to growth than the states which have higher population. But today, if you see, this is changing, and you will have a newer set of states contributing to higher per capita growth, and even the states which are known for very low per capita growth like UP and Bihar, which together hold 25% of our population, will see their per capita income rising significantly over the next decade. So you are going to see the states one after another raising the per capita income of their people, which means that the states which grow per capita faster will see the middle class expand at a faster rate, and the others will probably follow. Now connect this to migration. Now connect what I am saying to migration. You are seeing migration mainly from the states where the per capita growth is slower to the states where the per capita growth is faster. Now what happens is, people go from a state where the growth is slower to a state where the growth is faster, work, create income in the developed state, and what happens to the money? it travels straight back to the place where development is lagging. It gets spent in that economy. Now, all these things will help the states which are lagging to catch up. Our sense of narrative is that, oh, they will remain so. Oh, those people are coming from there because they have nothing there. This is the general mindset of a developed society. But it's not so, because somebody is catching up and he is seeking opportunity. The infrastructure allows a person, even who does a job which probably gives him 15,000-20,000 rupees a month, to take a flight from Bihar, come to anywhere, any developed state where there is economic opportunity and work. The time taken for that person to go and join in a job has shrunk to a day. And he is able to spend that money. Maybe the employer pays him to come, whatever be the case. So suddenly opportunities are changing, and all this will one day show up significantly in per capita in places where we don't expect it to show up anytime soon. We are looking at people moving up the per capita ladder from a conventional mindset, whereas the person who is at the bottom of the ladder is far more enterprising and far more opportunity seeking than we are able to kind of see for him. So this is what looks like the per capita income change. We are at 2 lakhs today. In 25 years, it's expected to be 15 lakhs. In US dollar terms, it's 2,500 to 12,400. Today, household consumption accounts for 57% of our GDP. It is expected that household consumption will change over a period of time, but still the market would grow. And most consumer sectors will see significant growth in demand. And people will get capital and credit to consume. That is going to be a significant driver of consumption. Now, many people have a view on consumerism, but I'm going to give you a small example which I noticed in my investment career. Before 2006, in the state of Tamil Nadu, in the rural society, a woman would invest close to 2 hours cooking in the morning, because it was a chula, which takes time to cook. The Tamil Nadu government gave a gas cylinder which is free. It changed the perspective of this person. After that, she would finish her cooking fast, she would go work in the fields, she makes her income, which has definitely expanded over a period of time. Today, all these people are consumers for electrical appliances, for so many products in the village. So, a trigger in one place leads to multiple consequences. It's not as if people will take a long time to move up. And if you see, I expect that the Indian household will be no different from a Western household in having appliances in a decade. I think all houses will have a washing machine, they will need a refrigerator, they will have all these things. Today, if you go into the rural society, you're seeing a lot of people have this. I would think that if somebody has this for which they pay 10,000, it's quite likely they can buy many other things which can change. So the consumerism is also something which will explode in the next decade. And the capital is going to be given by the banking system. That's the point I'm trying to say. If somebody wants to buy something, they would be able to get the credit at the point of sale, digitally, based on their banking pattern. I'm going to show a few industries and how they have grown over the last decade for you to get a sense of how this financialization can potentially play out. Let's take the asset management business where people invest through mutual funds. The base or the assets under management in 2003 was just 1,21,805 crores for the whole industry. In 2013, it went to 7,01,443 crores. in 2023, it has risen to 46,37,565 crores. And only a fraction of the population has been touched by this. If you compare with the West, we are 1/5 in penetration. So the room for penetration in this one industry is so huge. Demat accounts, where people hold their financial assets, has increased over this decade from 2.1 crore accounts. Imagine 140 crore people, only 2.1 crore account, to 11.4 crore account in 140. It's still not a big number. It's still a number with huge headroom. Here again, see the penetration. It's very, very insignificant compared to the world average. The turnover in the stock exchanges, which has grown by 20 times in 20 years, is probably set to grow even more, because you're going to see more and more companies getting listed on the stock exchanges. Today you've got so many unicorns, at least half of them will find their way into the stock markets. They will get listed and their value will get discovered. The insurance premium is another data point. We had 56,000 crores collected every year. It went to 6.91 lakh crore. Still, our density is $69. China and Thailand have $250. So the potential is so huge. Credit is another important point. As I told you, we were 6.8 lakh crores in 2003. It was 51 lakh 64,000 crore in 2013. It's 1 crore 34 lakh 50,706 crore. Household credit as a percentage of GDP is at 36%. And I believe that this financialization is going to give us an opportunity to give household credit to people at much lower rates of interest. The production of cement and steel give you a proxy on how infrastructure is going. And India has enough capacity in cement today to serve the next 5 years of economic growth. It's already with us. So whatever we're investing now needs to get utilized only later. So the adequacy of capacity is very important. Steel, we are putting up capacity, and interestingly, the capacities will be utilized much faster now than ever before. So the ability to put up further capacity becomes higher when your capacity gets utilized very quickly after being put up. So suppose you put up a capacity and it gets fully utilized in 3 or 4 years, then the ability to add more capacity is much higher. Whereas earlier it would take 7-8 years for the capacity to get utilized, which means the capital expansion cycle was much longer. Today it will be much shorter. If you take aviation, we have seen a very high growth of passengers. From 9.8 crore passengers in 2013, it's 19.1 crore passengers in 2023, and still growing. And the potential is huge. The number of airports has gone up from 50 in 2003 to 141. And the number of planes, again another interesting data point, has gone up from 225 to 713. Again, planes were seen as something which only the rich needed. Today, service providers across the country use aviation as the preferred mode to move people and goods. And the more we manufacture value-added goods in our country, like mobile phones and so many electronic products, they will also be moved through the aviation route, because when the value of the goods go up, you are able to send them through planes. So these are some of the simple data points which touch our lives, which tell you how things are changing. And what we see here is just the beginning. If you have the kind of investments that we are making today, I sense that it could be at a much higher magnitude, touching the lives of many more people who have not yet been touched, changing how opportunities open up for them, and as a result, creating a much bigger middle class and a far more inclusive society than we have ever had in our country. This is a data point which is very interesting. This shows the ownership structure of Indian companies. So the promoters owned 51%, the foreign institutional investor owned 19.5%, the Indian mutual fund owned 8.5% of our companies, and the public owned 13.8%. I sense that the mutual fund pie in our country has to grow a lot more, and you can do this only if you encourage more people to participate, give them more confidence in the system, and ensure that the system protects the interest of the smallest investors. So this is something that has to change, because once this changes, then the penetration of financial investments in our country can go up exponentially, and more capital in our country which is idling will be available for economic development. I think most of us know this data point of how much gold is kept idle in our country without economic productivity. So it's not as if we don't have the resources. The resource is not economically productive because people are not willing to put it to productivity. And I think that is a change. If it happens here, you'll see it resonate there with more people reducing their exposure to, let's say, gold and probably investing in financial assets. Most of you are familiar that the exposure of the upper middle class towards financial assets has increased significantly in the last 5 years at the expense of real estate investments. Actually, the discretionary real estate investments of the upper middle class and the middle class is definitely going down. And I sense that someday we would see that same shift happening between gold and financial assets also. That would mean that more capital, domestic, retail would be available for economic development, and the benefits of economic development will percolate to the person giving the capital, whereas today that's not happening. And when that happens, there will be far more disposable income at the hands of people at the bottom of the pyramid. Thank you so much. If you would like to ask any questions.
I'm not an economic person in the field of that, but I've been watching very closely all these statistics. Most times the government rolls out very, very rapidly. We are growing, we are getting there in 5 years. First and the biggest make me find all the time we are comparing ourselves with the West. While the West has been always a model of great disaster. World War I, World War II, atomic bomb, everything from the West we are trying to be. We can't think of any other model. Second thing we find, there are a lot of myths. I was calculating in my own village, in a village in Uttar Pradesh, I know the name of, where a lot of accounts were open. Everybody was asked to open a bank account. I used to ask the laborers, because I know them, what do you do with your bank account? So we do nothing. The leader, whatever, has taken all our accounts. Because he parked all his ill-gotten money in our accounts. The monetization, to my knowledge, demonetization failed. One of the biggest failure reason was, we had so many bank accounts with poor people that all the rich people called, keep 2 lakh, 2 lakh, 2 lakh, 2 lakh, we'll take it later. And they can't run away with that money. Though the Prime Minister was exhorting them, oh, they put the money in your bank, don't give them back. That is not possible. So all this digital economy, digital bank accounts, at least the survey which I have got of my own area, is absolutely meaningless.
See,
the number of ill-fed and the number of malnourished people in India have increased, not decreased. If you look at any data given by, not by the Indian government, but any data given from various agencies from outside.
No, see, the point which I would want to make on what you're saying, I don't know whether you remember in Tamil Nadu, the village's land document was never with him. When I was a kid, the land document in a village was never with the owner. It was always with the person who is most powerful in the village. That is one point. In Tamil Nadu also, when MNR, we are a developed state. Why talk about Uttar Pradesh? Let's talk about Tamil Nadu. In my village, people were telling me that their MNREGA passbooks were with the village chief. But these things will change. See, it's a question of time. See, you cannot take somebody else's property and keep it for so long. So when you put money in the hands of a person, okay, that is the only way. That's why even you see you're giving 1,000 rupees in Tamil Nadu every month to the lady. The idea is, I don't think 1,000 rupees will change her life. It's just a morale booster. So the point that I think is happening, see, I can tell you one thing. I'll give you an example. Now, if I want to send wages to my village for the farm labor, earlier I had to go there and give. Now, suppose I am not well. They will have to wait 1 more week. Right. Suppose somebody gives a service to me in the village. Let's say he sends a JCB, he does some farming work, some tractor, something. What would the person receiving the service say? I'll pay you when I come next. Simple example I'm telling. Today, somebody who provides any service at the bottom of the pyramid demands and takes his payment immediately because the person who is more power cannot give any excuse.
I rather, when you're talking about a company, I know one company very powerful, perhaps now, it's very different. Because we all, it's very,
No, it's all.
very young when the first boom took place in India of investment, when you had those famous investors in jail later on because the whole thing collapsed. Now again you had huge investment, a single person in India becoming in no time the second most richest man in the world, and in 24 hours he becomes again to the bottom. Now this is the top of, and I know personally, one company called Sahara Company. He was from my native place.
Correct.
So when the Supreme Court ordered him that you return the money to this 24,000 or 2,40,000 investors who have invested, give back the money. Otherwise you go to jail. All wondered why he is not giving that money to them, because he is ready to go to jail for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. He is already an old person. Why doesn't he return the money to them? And the answer was very simple. Those 2,40,000 people never existed. So he didn't know where to return, because he used to collect all the black money from the big, whether you are a robber or dacoit or black marketeer or a drug peddler, whatever you are, you go and invest. He'll find, suppose you got 1,000 rupees, which is a big money at any time, in that time. He'll find 10 names for you who don't exist at all. So when you talk about, unless there is these statistics the government is doling out lately.
No, it's not about the government. I think if you go to the
But
ground.
why is the population of hunger? Why does the index of hunger in India is going down so?
Sir, I will ask you a question. Are you having data on how much food money has been spent in every year in the last 3 years on food?
I do not know about money spent.
No.
I am saying.
No, food has been given. No. Just
Food
give
has
me.
been, so that shows the destitution, that you have to give 5 kg of food. It sees the destitute country, 80 crore people are receiving 5 kg of food every month from the government.
Again, I am saying the 80 crore people don't need. It's like Tamil Nadu giving 1,000 rupees. Government is giving this because it believes that it makes them a little stronger. That's how it is.
No. Government is straightway saying that it is to make them survive, they are giving.
No, I don't think so.
The government, that is what they're claiming.
Sir, the point, see, I'll tell you, as far as our country is concerned, there are two narratives. Now, the truth is somewhere in between. It is not at either extreme. So, I am not going to go either of these narratives because I don't trust either. Neither it is picture perfect nor it is, the other way around. So, truth is somewhere in between.
No, I'm talking about not the Indian narrative, people in India. There are.
No, I am only talking about the narrative of the West versus the government narrative. Those are the two narratives. If you say that.
No, India has got an opposition narrative also. The government, the people in opposition, they are always. And then there is a third narrative coming from IMF, coming from the outside. Now, we have got a choice not to believe any narrative and explore yourself around your surrounding and find out whether we are rising, falling. Because the way of rising, if you judge a man only by his quality of his shirt he wears, by the type of Ray-Ban glasses he is wearing, and he is a developed man, then Buddha should be the least developed person in the world. Because he was a beggar. I remember one line from him, which I often quote. I never forget that. It is attributed to him on economy. He says, when you are condemned to poverty by birth, by, say, social conditions or whatever, it is very demeaning. But nothing more liberating than voluntary poverty. When the chains break.
Nothing more demeaning than?
Nothing more liberating than voluntary poverty.
See, the point is that we, with our privilege, can view it this way. But the person at the bottom of the pyramid has his own worldview and life view, where he will disagree with us also on what we are saying.
That is true.
So, I think we are very lucky and privileged to have these views. But the person at the bottom wants something else. He is not going to agree with us if we prescribe what is good for him. So, I believe that, see, in the end, more choices are being given to more people. I have no doubt in that. Whether you take universal PDS, which is there in our state. Do you mean that in our state everybody doesn't have food? I am asking you the same. We are a developed state. We are giving universal PDS here. Does it mean that our people are all hungry and they have no food? They are taking that rice and feeding it to the chicken and saying that that is money. So, these judgments really don't hold water actually.
It's not like that. I was in the government for 35 years talking to the government people, why are you giving? They give it because once given, you can't withdraw. One thing. When there was a need, they gave. But withdrawal is not a thing which is possible. But the moment you withdraw politically, it becomes. Then the second thing, when they give TV, for example, it's not for people's benefit. TV was for the propaganda of the ruling party to have hold in the world. It is not for the entertainment and the development of poor people that you give them TV. You give them TV that you can make them ideologically, politically all inclined. So all the time I propaganda with. Then the social media came, the TV became. So now you want to control the social media. Because education can be very harmful if you done in that. Through propaganda.
No, but see, people go, I'll tell you, so I have seen this miseducation, wrong education in my field. Continuously we see it. This is not new. And I'm saying all this in developed places. Not in developed states only all this happens. This doesn't happen in a place where people don't have anything. They don't even have time to see all this nonsense. Because he has work to do and he doesn't have time to see all this. It's only in the developed state, whatever we are saying happens. See, that's what I said, that people from the regions of our country which are not developed are migrating in search of economic opportunity. They are maxing out. They are earning more money than they would if they worked in white collar jobs. This is the reality. This is the reality. We are seeing everywhere how these people work and how they earn.
Added to the fact that GST is also balancing that by transferring from the manufacturer
To the consumer state. Yeah. So, India, everything will not happen perfectly. That's a given. Because we have so many factors. You mentioned the politicians. The bureaucrats are no better. Because they are the guys who sit in that seat always. Politicians come and go. They have no accountability actually. So, these things have to be just left at that. I don't think I would go deep into studying their rights and wrongs because I know it's an imperfect system. But what I'm more concerned is, are you actually opening up opportunity to people? Are people getting an opportunity to learn? So I'll give you, there are multiple examples that I am seeing where people are using the digital public infrastructure to form their own judgments. In the process, what you're saying is also happening. People go in the wrong path first. They learn the wrong things. Then they realize that it's not working. Then they think that they need to unlearn and relearn. Then they come back to one middle ground. Then they take the right path. This is how our country will change. In all this is going to take time, but fact of the matter is, more people are going to be touched by development in the next decade than we had in the previous 3 decades. The first 2 decades, it only touched certain people of a certain strata. Whereas I see that it's getting more democratized, more people are getting exposed to it, they're showing a keenness to participate.
The point was very simple. Development has to be a bigger basket. Merely looking at development from only economic point of view, that is money, and economic also money. Development can be also in the point of social changes of a human behavior. As we talk of spirituality, development and economics don't talk of a spiritual thing. They say it doesn't exist. Whatever exists is atom and matter. Nothing beyond that. And all your spiritual talks and inner growth is just not there. It's a blah blah stuff, what they say. That is why I say development has to be a bigger basket. It contains, that we are talking of wisdom. Knowledge we are increasing very fast. Wisdom we are going down.
Sir, I believe that when you increase knowledge like this, someday people become wiser. It's a trajectory. It's like a hierarchy of needs which we read in behavioral theory. When somebody gets something, he starts seeking something more. Why are we trying to be spiritual at a certain stage of life? Because we feel we have got all the other things. So we want something more. We don't want material thing, then you move towards something bigger. It's normal. I don't think, see, the point is, when you have such a diverse society where, there's so much of difference in people, you have to give everybody the opportunity. We can't say that this has to be like this. You can't be definitive. It will be open-ended and people will find their way. That's my simple point. Because you have so much of diversity. How can you homogenize this? There is no way you can do it. So it will only be like this, but more people will find their way. And that seems to be my observation, because that's what my life observation has been. More people are finding their way. And I think more people find the right way. Otherwise, we can't believe in the future of our society. That is my problem. If you are looking at the future, you have to believe that more people will go in the right path, find all that they need to find, and go to a better place in life. It's a simple belief. We have to believe in it. We don't have a choice, right? What is the alternative? We don't have an alternative.
May I change the subject a little? We're talking about growth. There is huge popularity increase and young people increase in India, which means that they need proper education, understanding, awareness. And how do you see now when we also talk about development, and the important matter in today's world is the green area, I mean the environmental thing, like aeroplanes increasing travelers there, and in relation to pollution. So to find a balance of this industrial and natures, between natures, is there, how would I say it clearly, is there any idea how you see that the need of nature meets with the economic or this investment world or whatever?
See, if you look at energy, over the last 5 years, the amount of change that we have seen in going to renewables, non-conventional energy, which is your renewable energy, is much higher than what you have seen previously, and we are going to see more and more renewable energy. You're going to see more and more of solar and hydro. You're going to see wind, everything. But even that is not free of, if you're investing in solar energy, it's not as if you're getting it without compromising on the environment, because you are getting the material for that from the environment only. But its working and functioning is relatively better than, let's say, thermal energy. I think that over a period of time, as we, grow higher and higher, we will have to become more and more conscious as a society. And every day you can see that consciousness. You take our state, earlier, society was expecting government to renew or reinvigorate water bodies. Today you have so many NGOs doing that work, people pooling in money. Every fortnight you see at least one big tank which has been made all right before the rains, and it's been revived. So these things are happening at multiple levels, and I think it will be aspirational. People are much more aware of the environment today than they were, let's say, 5 or 10 years back. However, we have a long way to go in our civic management, in the sense how we, for example, you go to Perungudi or you go to Pallikarnai, which is very close to here. I would always ask myself the question that place itself did not deserve to exist in that manner. If we had disposed our city's waste in a proper way, you would never have created a dump like that. But we are still trying to change at a rate which probably is not the ideal rate, but we are trying to change. I think that somewhere that the awareness will come. I've seen in some other societies which have higher awareness. You go to another state, you go to Kerala, it is slightly better, right? So I think it's very uneven, but environmental awareness is not something which India is going to ignore. It is definitely there, it's rising, but we don't talk too much about it because we have other priorities and we are only talking about those priorities. But I'll give you a small example. You can it's easy for you to read and also find out. Forest cover, an increase in population of wildlife. Two things in the last decade, I think we have gone a long way. We have gone a really long way in these two areas, which is a good sign. If you ask me for what I can say is a green shoot, in these two areas, I think we have done extremely well. Renewable energy is another area which is giving us hope. But I think our cities have to be managed better. Our water bodies have to be managed better. That is where I think there's more fear than the aeroplanes flying. City waste, urban waste and water bodies are two definite worries for our country because we don't have enough water and we are polluting our water bodies, which will otherwise become a source of water for smaller populations or smaller aggregations.
So there is opportunity in India to improve from that level.
At the local level there is.
Yeah.
People want it. At the ground. If you go to a village, you see their aspiration. They're slowly starting to think differently.
Sir, good evening. I am not finding fault with the central government or state governments or any particular political parties. How far it is reasonable to spend more money of the government on populistic schemes like welfare schemes more because of so many reasons, because of vote bank politics or some other reason. So the people has to realize to what extent, what percentage they have to spend for this particular populistic measures for countries development of the country's economy. Thank you.
So there's so much to fill. I'll give you a recent example which I noticed just a few days back. It came to my notice. Government in Tamil Nadu gives free medical education for people who study in government schools. Government schools, if you study in a government school and then you go to study medical education after passing NEET, the government gives free, they pay the fees and all these things. We had this peculiar case of a girl from Kodaikanal, right up. The village is not even a motorable road. This girl has studied in a government aided school. It's a government school only. But technically it is a government aided school, right? They have paid the fees by pledging everything they have to a government college. Even that, whatever, 40,000-50,000 rupees, they don't have. This is despite having a scheme. There is a scheme, but it's still there is somebody who is not got what should have been a legitimate benefit. Because a government aided school and a government school in my view are one and the same. I mean, they are no different. Now one should we differentiate between the two? I think they are the same. But she's not got the benefit. And again, there are some things which are wrong, there are some things which are right when it comes to, I think there are some things which have definitely contributed, there are some things which have not contributed. It's a mixed bag. It is up to political leadership in each zone, region, state to decide what is the right approach and do the right thing. Because when you make an expenditure which you ought not to have made, it is going to contribute to the debt of that state. I'll give you an example. Tamil Nadu between 2006 and 2011, those 5 years spent, if my memory is correct, 4,000 to 5,000 crores per year on television, which he mentioned. That sum spent was 20,000 crores. That sum was equal to the debt of the state when the government came to power. And the entire sum possibly contributing to adding to the debt. And that sum has compounded over the subsequent 12 years. And it's probably 1 lakh crore out of the 7 lakh crore debt. I'm giving you one example. Every year Tamil Nadu loses 10,000 crores in Tamil Nadu Electricity Board alone. I'm not taking the transport corporations. This every year gets compounded and probably is today 1.5 lakh crores of debt. So out of the 7.5 lakh crores debt of the state, I have already accounted for 1/3. Just two areas which we could have very well avoided. Now, look at your competing states. They are in a much better financial position. So, states should do what is prudent. I am not going to question their right to pay 1,000 rupees to somebody. As long as that person is really in need of that 1,000, I don't have a problem. But the way in which we choose our beneficiaries is a political decision. Okay, it's an empirical, vote bank linked decision. No, we don't control it. We have elected people, they have a right to do it. We'll have to again address it only the next time we vote. We have no voice. I don't think we have a say in this matter. Because a democratically elected person does what he wants. How can you go and tell him not to do it? But I have no doubt in my mind that the development of that state which manages itself in this fashion would not meet its legitimate potential. It will not achieve what it is capable of achieving. And the society would eventually end up being a loser. I am willing to stick my neck out and say this. But it's a democratic process. It's a democratic choice and we have a duty to respect it. I don't have a choice. It's a fact. We should have the maturity to accept it. Most of us don't. We become angry, we go on social media, we criticize. That's not the way to do it. And one more thing, I think at the position that we are all in, maybe our sensitivity to the problems of people right at the bottom needs to be better, because we don't know how many people cannot do without many of these things. Like this bus pass for a school student, cycle, computer, uniform, footwear, school bag. I've just rattled 6 freebies. I would think these are not things which you stop. And after doing this morning I have a request from somebody saying that, sir, in our place in Kovalam, the school doesn't have toilets, it doesn't have proper classrooms, this is a government school. He's sending, can you do something? I've heard from an NGO that 12 lakhs if you spend per school, this is the sum, I can give you the outlay. If you spend 12 lakhs per school as a donor, you can change that government school's infrastructure. These people, you have to just give the NGO the money, they will go and do it, and these are good people. So the same society is also trying to address these things. What is that scheme for schools which, we go and make the school better? Namma school. Yeah, there is a theme. So somewhere the government knows where the gaps are and is trying to use civil society to fill those things. So the intent is there. Now what are we doing? Should we give the 12 lakhs to one school or should we criticize the government? It's a very simple choice. So many of us who can probably should do the former and not waste our time on the latter. This is my sense. Because otherwise what happens? We spend 10 years doing this. We, as a society, we have those resources. We should do what we need to do. That is my sense. If you want perfect governance, you will not get it in an electoral democracy. You will not get it. It will always be imperfect. The extent of imperfection is debatable, whether it's tolerable to us or not tolerable to us. It's a matter of debate. But even then we have only one vote and we can't change anything.
But regarding the subsidy, there are instances where the government has political will to withdraw subsidies like gas subsidies.
Yeah. No, they made the people withdraw. They made you to say, I don't want it. They didn't withdraw it. Sir, even today in our state, you can tell the rich people to say, I don't want the ration rice. You can ask all your party members to say, I don't want. Simple. You're 25% of the population. Everyone affluent. There's no poor guy in the party. It's possible. They don't. Somebody has to feed that idea and somebody has to do it. That's all. It will happen hopefully someday. But as citizens, what can we do? We have to wait for that to happen. There's nothing else you can do. Thank you, Tim.
Many thanks to Mr. Sekhar. And thank you to everyone here for what has been a most stimulating exchange. I think very often it's one way. It's talking to people, but this has been a genuine exchange of ideas with some electricity. It's very nice. So thank you again, and thank all of our questioners.